It started with a voice. Not a face, not a name, just a voice that slipped through the speakers at my favorite coffee shop one rainy afternoon. I remember stopping mid-sip, the warmth of the drink forgotten as the sound wrapped around me. It wasn't just beautiful, it felt like someone had taken a piece of my heart and sung it back to me. Soft, raw, a little unsure. Like it didn't know how powerful it was. I sat there, frozen, unsure if anyone else was feeling what I was feeling. But I knew one thing for sure, whoever that voice belonged to, they had just changed something in me. I didn't know their name. I didn't know what they looked like. But I kept coming back, day after day, hoping to hear that voice again. Hoping it would find me like it did that first time. And one day, it did, only this time, everything changed. The coffee shop had always been my quiet place. The smell of roasted beans, the low hum of conversations, the sound of milk steaming, it all gave me a kind of comfort I couldn't explain. I'd sit by the window with my usual cup, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching people come and go. That day felt like any other. The weather outside was soft and gray, the kind of day where the world moved a little slower. I had my book open, though I wasn't really reading. My mind had been drifting more than usual lately. Then the music started. It wasn't from the speakers overhead. No, this was live, soft and raw and just a little hesitant at first. I looked up, and there she was, back near the corner, standing with nothing but a mic and a small speaker at her side. She was facing slightly away, hidden by the plant wall, but the sound carried. And it stopped me completely. The way she sang, it wasn't flashy or polished. It was full of feeling, like every note had been lived through. I could hear the heartbreak, the hope, the weight of something real in her voice. I felt like I shouldn't be listening, like I had stumbled into something private. But I couldn't stop. I closed my book and just listened. People kept chatting, sipping their drinks, typing away. But for me, the room had gone silent. All I could hear was her. I tried to catch a glimpse of her face, but she stayed mostly behind the leaves, half turned, almost like she didn't want to be seen. Just heard. She sang 3 songs. I didn't know the titles, but the words stuck to me. When she finished, there was soft applause, polite and scattered. And then she was gone. Just like that. I didn't even see her leave. I sat there for a long while after, wondering if anyone else had felt what I did. That pull, that strange sense of connection to someone I didn't know at all. It felt personal in a way nothing had in a long time. The next day, I came back. Same table, same drink, different book. I told myself I was just enjoying my usual routine. But deep down, I knew why I was there. I wanted to hear her again. To feel that thing again. I watched the corner she had stood in, hoping for that soft hum to rise above the noise again. She didn't show up that day. Or the next. But I kept coming, waiting, listening, wanting to feel something more than just the comfort of a coffee cup in my hands. Wanting that voice to find me again. Before that voice found me, my days were quiet. Safe, maybe, but also numb in a way I hadn't fully realized. I went through the motions, wake up, work, eat, sleep. There were smiles with friends, texts that went unanswered, nights spent scrolling through songs that never really spoke to me. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't alive either. I had come out a year before, not in some grand, dramatic way, just quietly. A text to my sister. A conversation with one close friend. It was enough to feel like I'd done something brave, but inside, I still felt small. Like I hadn't fully stepped into who I was. There's something about being seen that can be terrifying. And I don't mean just physically, I mean being truly seen for who you are, without the masks or the filters or the little performances we all do to fit in. I wasn't ready for that. I told myself I didn't care if anyone understood me, but I did. Deeply. I craved connection but didn't know how to reach for it. I avoided eye contact in crowded rooms. I smiled when I didn't mean it. I kept my headphones in even when they weren't playing anything, just to create space between me and the world. So I started going to the coffee shop more often. It became my quiet escape. A way to be around people without having to interact. Just background noise and something warm in my hands. No pressure. No risk. That's why her voice hit so hard. Because it cut through all that safe distance I had built. It reached places in me that even I hadn't looked at in a while. Her voice didn't just sound good, it sounded real. Like someone had put their whole self into the music, unafraid to be vulnerable. It made me ache. Not in a painful way, but in a way that made me realize how much I missed feeling something that strong. I found myself thinking about her even when I wasn't at the cafe. Wondering what she looked like, what her name was, what kind of life she had when she wasn't singing to a half-full room of distracted coffee drinkers. I imagined her walking through the city with earbuds in, humming songs that hadn't been written yet. I thought about how she must feel, standing there, singing with so much honesty, not even knowing how deeply she was reaching people. I also thought about what it would be like to tell her. To say, your voice did something to me. It woke me up, but I couldn't even imagine saying that out loud. Not yet. So instead, I waited. I returned each day, like it was part of some silent ritual. Same table, same drink, eyes scanning the back corner. Hoping, wishing, not just to hear her again, but maybe, if I was brave enough one day, to finally say something. It became part of my routine, even though I never admitted it out loud. Every day, after work or in between errands, I'd find myself walking toward that same cafe. Some days I'd convince myself I was just craving their coffee, or that I needed a break from everything. But deep down, I knew why I was going. I was chasing her voice. I'd sit at the same table, order the same drink, and pretend to read or scroll through my phone. But I was always listening, waiting for the moment that soft, soulful sound would start again. Some days she was there, her voice floating gently through the cafe like a secret only a few of us could hear. Other days, the corner was empty, and I'd leave with a strange mix of disappointment and hope for the next day. The first time I recorded her, I felt guilty. It was just a short clip on my phone, nothing special. She was singing something slow and dreamy, her eyes closed as if the words were painting pictures behind her eyelids. I held my phone low, barely moving, heart pounding like I was doing something I wasn't supposed to. But I needed to keep a piece of that moment. I needed proof that what I felt was real. At home, I'd play the recording over and over. Not just to hear her voice again, but because something about it helped me feel like I wasn't so alone. There was this comfort in her sound, like she understood things I hadn't found the words for yet. It wasn't just the notes or the lyrics, it was the way she sang them, like she wasn't hiding from anything. Each day, I noticed little things about her. The way she stood a bit off to the side, not fully facing the room. How she always wore oversized sweaters, sleeves pulled down over her hands. Her eyes rarely met anyone's, but when they did, there was a spark, quiet but strong. She never stayed after singing. She'd pack up fast, head down, like she didn't want to be recognized. Like she wanted the music to speak for her. The more I watched, the more curious I became. I started wondering who she was outside of these walls. What her laugh sounded like. Whether she liked rainy days or sunny ones. What kind of things made her feel safe. I didn't know her, but I felt connected, like her voice had built a bridge between her world and mine. I started to imagine what it would be like to finally say something. Just a simple hello, maybe a compliment, but every time I thought I might do it, I froze. My chest would tighten, and the words would fall apart in my head before I could speak them. I was afraid of interrupting something pure, afraid of making it awkward, afraid she'd pull away and never come back. Still, the idea stayed with me. I didn't want to be just another quiet listener. I wanted her to know what her voice had done. How it had filled something inside me that I didn't know was empty. One day, I told myself. One day I'd speak. One day I'd tell her. Until then, I kept showing up. Kept listening. Kept waiting for the right moment, the right breath, the right courage. I woke up that morning with a strange kind of energy. The kind that sits low in your stomach, like nerves wrapped in excitement. I didn't have anything important planned, but I knew I was going to the coffee shop. Not just to listen this time. Today, I wanted to say something. I had spent too many days wondering, hoping, and hiding behind silence. It was time. I got there earlier than usual. The place was still quiet, a few people scattered across the room, sipping coffee or typing away on laptops. I chose a table closer to the back this time, just in case she came early too. My heart was already racing, but I tried to steady it. I took a few deep breaths, practiced a small smile in the reflection of my phone screen, and kept rehearsing lines in my head. Hi, I really love your voice. You're amazing. I come here just to hear you sing. Sorry to bother you, but I wanted to say thanks. None of them sounded quite right. But I didn't care anymore. I just needed to say something. About 20 minutes later, I saw her walk in. Her hands were wrapped around a guitar case, her eyes scanning the room for a moment before settling into her usual corner. She wore a dark green hoodie today, sleeves bunched at the wrists, and her hair was tied back in a low, messy bun. She looked like she hadn't slept much, but there was still that calm around her. That quiet strength. I watched as she set up, plugged in her mic, adjusted her small speaker, tested the sound. Then she started singing. This time, it was a cover of a classic song. One I had heard 100 times before, but never like this. Her version slowed everything down. She stretched each word like she was tasting it, letting it breathe. The room felt smaller when she sang, more intimate, like everyone had quietly agreed to stop talking for a while. When the last note faded, there was soft clapping again. A few people smiled and nodded in appreciation, but no one approached her. No one said anything. That was always how it went. Except today. I stood up slowly, heart thudding hard in my chest, and walked over before I could talk myself out of it. She was already unplugging her mic, her eyes down, not noticing me until I was close enough to speak. "Hey," I said softly. She looked up, startled but not unfriendly. Her eyes were even more expressive up close, gentle, curious, a little guarded. "I just wanted to say," I continued, "your voice, it's really something. I've been coming here for a while now, and every time you sing, it makes my day better." She blinked, like she wasn't used to compliments, then gave a shy smile. "Oh, wow, thank you, that really means a lot." We stood there for a second, the moment hanging between us like a held breath. I smiled again, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. "I've kind of been hoping to tell you that for a while." She let out a soft laugh, the kind that sounded surprised and sweet. "I always feel invisible when I sing. Like people hear the sound but not the person behind it." "I hear both," I said. "And I see you now." That made her blush. She looked down, then back at me. "I'm Elise." "I'm Ray." We shook hands, hers soft and slightly cold. It was such a small thing, but in that moment, it felt like the start of something real. Not just a connection through sound, but through presence. Through choice. She finished packing up and, for the first time, didn't rush out. Instead, she sat across from me. We talked for a while, about music, books, favorite cafes. Nothing too deep yet, just enough to feel that spark growing into something more. When she finally left, she gave me one last smile and said, "Maybe I'll see you here tomorrow." I nodded, still feeling the warmth of that first real moment between us. And for the first time in a long while, I left the cafe not just with a coffee cup in my hand, but with something full in my chest. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. Her voice wasn't just a sound in my ears anymore. It had a name, a face, a story. Elise. I repeated it to myself all morning, like a new song I didn't want to forget. I even arrived at the cafe earlier than usual, not out of nerves this time, but anticipation. A quiet excitement sat with me at the table, warming my chest more than the drink in my hands ever could. She walked in right on time, guitar case in hand, hoodie pulled tight against the wind. She spotted me almost immediately and gave a small wave as she headed to her usual spot. I waved back, smiling. It felt so natural, but inside, I was buzzing. Watching her set up again felt different this time. I wasn't just a stranger listening. I was someone she had talked to. Someone she had remembered. She sang another mix of covers and soft originals. Her voice was still magic, still pulling me in, but I also noticed the way she looked up more now, the way her shoulders seemed a little less tense. Maybe knowing someone was really listening changed something for her too. When she finished and packed up, she came to sit with me without waiting for an invitation. She ordered a tea, and we stayed at that table for over an hour. Time felt strange when we talked, like the outside world had paused for a while. She told me more about her life. That she had moved to the city a few months ago, hoping for a fresh start after a tough breakup and a long stretch of not singing at all. That performing in public had terrified her at first, but it was the only way she could reconnect with music again. I listened closely, not just to her words, but the way she said them. Soft, but honest. She didn't talk to fill silence. She talked like she meant every word. I found myself leaning in, not wanting to miss anything. She asked about me, too. About my job, my writing, the way I always carried a book but rarely turned the pages. I laughed at that, surprised she had noticed. I admitted how much time I spent just watching and listening. That sometimes, it felt safer to be an observer than a participant. She didn't laugh or tease me. She just nodded like she understood. We talked about music, our favorite artists, songs that made us cry, lyrics that stuck like memories. We traded playlists and smiled at the ones we had in common. There was a moment where she looked at me, her head tilted slightly, and said, "I feel like I've known you longer than just a couple of conversations." I felt that too. By the time she stood to leave, the cafe had started to empty out, the evening light slipping through the windows in soft gold. She hesitated before walking away, then pulled out her phone and asked for my number. I typed it in quickly, my fingers shaking just a little. She smiled again, then said, "I'm glad you said something the other day. I didn't know anyone really heard me." "I heard you," I said softly. "I still do." She left after that, but the space she had filled didn't feel empty. It lingered, like the sound of her last note still echoing in the corners of the room. I sat there for a long time after, holding the moment like a gift I hadn't expected but now couldn't imagine losing. We kept meeting at the cafe, day after day, sometimes without planning, sometimes through a quick message, "You around today?" Her name on my phone always made me smile. It was strange how quickly something ordinary had turned into the best part of my day. Our conversations grew deeper, more honest. We talked about old relationships, fears we hadn't voiced before, dreams we rarely shared out loud. She told me she had stopped performing for nearly 2 years after someone she loved told her she wasn't good enough. I could see how much that had hurt her, how the words had buried themselves deep. She was still digging them out, still finding her voice again. I listened, never rushing her, never trying to fix it. Just being there. She did the same for me. When I told her about the strange limbo I'd lived in since coming out, how even in safe spaces I felt like a visitor, not someone who belonged, she reached across the table and touched my hand, gently. "You belong with me," she whispered. And it was the first time I believed it. But not everything was soft and easy. That afternoon, we were sitting at our usual table near the back. She had just finished singing a cover that made the whole room go quiet. People actually clapped this time, louder than usual. But as she sat down, 2 women at the next table leaned in toward each other and whispered something. At first, I didn't hear it clearly. Just the tone, sharp, mocking. Then one of them said, "She always sings like she's crying. It's kind of pathetic." The words sliced through the calm like cold glass. Elise's shoulders tensed immediately, her eyes dropped, and I saw it, the walls going back up. The confidence she had been slowly rebuilding, shaken again by strangers who didn't understand. She didn't say anything, just started fidgeting with her sleeves, her whole posture shrinking. I felt my face heat with anger. Not loud anger, but the kind that sat heavy in the chest. I leaned closer and spoke softly, just to her. "Don't listen to them. You're amazing. You know that, right?" She forced a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I saw the old doubts rushing back in, the ones she thought she'd buried. So I stood up, not to make a scene, just to make a point. I walked over to their table, calm but clear. She sings with feeling because it matters. Maybe you don't understand that, but some of us do. They looked surprised, even a little embarrassed. One of them muttered something, but I didn't stay to hear it. I went back to Elise and sat down. She looked at me, stunned, eyes slightly glassy. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. I know, I said, but I wanted to. She nodded slowly, lips pressing together like she was holding something back. No one's ever stood up for me like that. I didn't know what to say, so I just took her hand. She didn't pull away. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat there, quiet, fingers laced, her thumb gently brushing over mine. Outside, the sky had turned soft and silver, clouds stretching like a painting. Inside, it felt like something had shifted. Like the space between us had grown smaller, not from words, but from something stronger. Something felt, something shared. She messaged me later that night. Just one line, "Thank you for seeing me." The next day, she didn't sing. I arrived a little later than usual, but she was already there, seated at the far end of the cafe, no guitar case in sight. She was sipping tea and staring out the window, lost in thought. When I walked in, she looked up, her face softening when she saw me. I slid into the seat across from her without needing to ask. I didn't feel like performing today, she said quietly. That's okay, I replied. You don't have to perform for anyone. She smiled, faintly, then looked back out the window. I keep thinking about yesterday. About what they said. They don't matter, I said gently, but she shook her head. I know, but words stick, even when you tell yourself they shouldn't. I nodded. I understood more than I could say. We sat in silence for a while, letting the quiet settle. It wasn't awkward, just real. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and a tiny spark lit in her eyes. It's you. I blinked. Me. She held up her screen. It was a message from the social account I'd made just for music recommendations and quotes. Something I'd created long ago to share little pieces of what I loved without needing to show my face. I'd forgotten I even had it linked to my name. You followed me this morning, she said. And you sent this. She opened the message. I had written it without thinking too much. Just a quiet voice note of a song that reminded me of her. No caption, just melody. She had already played it. I could tell. I didn't know you were behind that page, she added, smiling wider now. I've been following it for months. We both laughed, a soft sound that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. I guess we've been circling each other longer than we knew, I said. She leaned forward. You always post the most honest things. I'd read those and think, who is this person that feels like they're inside my head? My cheeks flushed. I didn't think anyone was actually reading them. I was, she said. And listening. The silence between us this time was different. It felt charged, warm, full of things that didn't need words. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper. I wrote something last night. After you stood up for me. She handed it over. It was a page of handwritten lyrics. Simple, a little messy, but full of heart. The title at the top read, You Heard Me. Asterisk. I read the lines slowly, feeling the weight of each one. It was about not being invisible anymore. About finding someone who saw you when you didn't know how to be seen. I looked up at her, unable to speak for a second. She was watching me closely, waiting for my reaction. It's beautiful, I said finally. Like everything you sing. She shrugged, looking down. I didn't know if I should share it. But after yesterday, after you. I reached across the table, took her hand. I'm glad you did. We didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing leaves against the glass. Inside, we just sat there, two people who had started as strangers, brought together by a voice, and who now, without saying it out loud, knew they were something more. The days that followed felt softer somehow. We didn't talk about what we were or where this was going. We just let things be. Some mornings, she'd send me voice notes of songs she was working on, her voice still sleepy, a little rough around the edges. Other times, I'd send her a line from a poem or a lyric that reminded me of her. It was all quiet, simple, and spoken. But it meant something. It meant everything. One weekend, she asked if I wanted to go for a walk. Not around the city, but somewhere quieter. We ended up in a small park outside town, tucked between trees and little trails. It was just us, the crunch of leaves under our shoes, the occasional chirp of birds. She carried her guitar, even though she didn't say why. We found a bench near the edge of a pond, and she sat down, pulling the guitar across her lap. I wrote the full version, she said. Of the song, the one I showed you. I smiled, nodding. Can I hear it? She took a breath, eyes on her hands as her fingers settled on the strings. Then she played. The song was slow, gentle, and full of truth. She didn't try to sound perfect. She just let the words fall out, one by one, like petals. It was about being invisible, about feeling small in a world that moved too fast. About someone who listened, really listened, and made her feel seen. As she sang, her voice cracked just once, but she didn't stop. She kept going, and by the time she finished, my chest felt heavy and full at the same time. She looked up at me, searching. Too much. No, I said. Not enough. I'd listen to it 100 times. She smiled, this quiet, glowing kind of smile, and for a while, we just sat there. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who had found something rare. Later that evening, we were back in the city, sitting side by side in the cafe where it all started. She didn't sing that night. We didn't need music. We just watched the light dim outside the windows and talked about little things. How she used to be afraid of thunderstorms, how I couldn't sleep unless I heard rain tapping on the glass. And then she looked at me and said, "Do you ever think about how weird it is? That I was just a voice to you. That I could have walked out one day, and you'd never have known my name." I nodded, but I didn't let you walk away. She took my hand again, that same gentle way she always did, like it was something precious. "Thank you for finding me. I think you found me, too," I whispered. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we stayed like that until the lights in the cafe dimmed, and the barista swept the floor nearby. It was late, the kind of late where the world goes quiet. But neither of us wanted to move. When we finally stood to leave, she turned to me and said, "You know, I was never really anonymous. I just didn't think anyone cared enough to look." I reached out and brushed a piece of hair from her face. I looked, and I saw everything, and just like that, something that had started with a single voice became a story neither of us wanted to end. Not a song on a loop, not a moment we'd replay. But something living, growing, becoming more with every breath we shared. We walked out into the cool night air together, no longer strangers, no longer hiding. Just two people who had found love in a place where only music had spoken before. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive the way we expect it. It doesn't come with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, it starts with a voice, a sound that reaches something inside you before you even know what it means. That's how it was with her. No name, no face, just music. And from that music, a connection grew. Slowly, gently, and honestly. What began as quiet admiration from a distance became something real. A bond built on understanding, vulnerability, and trust. We didn't need to define it. We just lived it. Through quiet conversations, shared glances, songs that said what we couldn't, and the feeling of finally being seen, truly seen, by someone who cared enough to look deeper. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more faceless stories that speak to the soul. And if you've ever fallen for someone in the most unexpected way, share your experience in the comments, we'd love to hear your story. Until next time, thank you for listening.